Zipper rolls out to the right, pitches off to Taylor, and Taylor's to the 20, down to the 15, down to the 10, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Touchdown, Billy Taylor! Billy Taylor scored a touchdown from 21 yards out. The crowd goes berserk. It was November 22nd, 1969. That they came to Barry, Michigan, all dressed in maize and blue. The words were said, the prayers were read, and everybody cried. But when they closed the coffin, there was someone else inside. Oh, they came to Barry, Michigan, but Michigan wasn't dead. And when the game was over, it was someone else instead. 11 Michigan Wolverines put on the gloves of gray, and as the organ played the victors, they laid Woody Hayes away. Under center is Wangler at the 45. He goes back. He's looking for a receiver. He throws downfield to Carter. Who's got it better than us? Nobody!
Welcome to the Michigan Man Podcast on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew, for Wolverine fans from coast to coast. Go Blue, and welcome to the Penn State Visitors Edition of the show. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Joining us today is the radio play-by-play voice of the Nittany Lions, Steve Jones. As usual, we get things started with my view from Section 17. We aren't exaggerating when we say this is a must-win game. It is if we want to keep our goal alive of winning the Big Ten East, getting to Indianapolis, and making our first appearance in the playoffs. We cannot afford a misstep. Over the last 2 weeks, the medical tent on the sidelines has been pretty crowded. The question this week is how many guys will be able to go on Saturday. I'm sure Jim and staff already have an idea who won't be ready and who the game time decisions will be. The next man up mantra sort of gets on my nerves sometimes, but this late in the season, that is the case. We have to get the guys ready to play who are healthy, no excuses, just practice, and put together a game plan that gives us the best chance to win. We all know what our fans are saying, some of our fans I should say, as well as local and national media. Jim Harbaugh can't win the big games, especially on the road, against ranked teams when it matters. Well, this Saturday at high noon, he gets another chance to do just that. It is a crossroads game for Michigan football this year, no doubt about it. My guest today says if Sean Clifford hadn't been injured, there is a very real chance Penn State would be undefeated right now. Some will debate that, but one thing you cannot debate is that they are a good football team, and when they are at home, they are very tough to beat. Up next on our Visitors Edition is Steve Jones, the radio play-by-play voice of Penn State football. So stay with us. Here with us on our visitors segment today is Penn State radio play-by-play voice Steve Jones. Steve, once again, great to have you back on the show with us.
It's great to be with you, Mike.
Well, Steve, I think it's safe to say the season hasn't gone the way a lot of Nittany Lion fans hoped it would. 6-3 heading into this weekend's game, though. But two of those losses, Iowa and Illinois, took place when Sean Clifford was hurt. It seems that if he'd been healthy, this team could easily be 8-1, couldn't they?
If not undefeated, because you would have had momentum, obviously, going into the Ohio State game. Look, I mean, he's obviously the guy that makes it go. In his last, 13 starts, he now has 21 touchdown passes and 7 interceptions, 16 and 6 this year. So you're talking about a 3-to-1 touchdown to interception rate. And that is, by the way, where he was in 2019, he had 23 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. So he's back to throwing it that way. He has thrown for 724 yards in his last 2 games combined, has great command of the offense, hesitated running after the injury against Iowa, hesitated running against Iowa. Now he's back to doing everything, which is a big plus, and I think that helps make the offense go.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, we've seen that in the past playing Penn State. Not only is he a very, very accurate passer, but he can beat you with his feet very easily, can't he?
He can. He's decent at running the quarterback draw. I mean, he's not Trace McSorley the way he runs it, but he's decent at it. He also can get to the edge, and he actually has better straight line speed than McSorley does. At least it gives them an added component that he can do that when he's fully engaged in the offense.
Keeping him upright has been somewhat of an issue this season. He's been sacked, I believe, 18 times. Keeping Michigan from pressuring him this week is a key in the game, isn't it?
Well, pressure will be important. To be honest with you, Mike, I think the offensive line for Penn State's actually protected him pretty well because Penn State's throwing the ball way more than it has in past years. So there's going to be more opportunities for teams to get sack opportunities. So, I mean, I think when you're looking at 2 sacks a game, which is what you're talking about with him or with Penn State over on some of those sacks were on Roberson, by the way, too. So you have to remember that. They weren't all with Clifford. I think that for the most part, this offensive line has done a good job of protecting him, allowing him to get the ball to a guy like Jahan Dotson.
Jahan Dotson, of course, is the prime target. The guy's a highlight reel. Big game Saturday against Maryland. Comes into this game, I believe, with 932 yards receiving. He is just a special game breaker kind of a kid, isn't he?
Well, Mike, I saw his mother before the game. I saw her at breakfast that morning, and I walked up and I said, look, instead of wearing 5, you should wear a target. I said, because he is the designated guy that each team is trying to stop. And he's averaging 8 catches a game. He had 11 catches for a school record, 242 yards and 3 touchdowns on Saturday. Every single game, he's right around 7, 8, 9 catches a game. And again, he's the guy that everybody zeroes in on, yet he still has the ability to make plays. He has really soft hands. He runs great routes. And then, what he's done the last couple of years, he's really worked hard on his speed, and he's now at that 4.33 level, which is a big plus.
Well, I have to say the only full Penn State game I've seen this year was the Auburn game, and whenever I see a highlight reel of the game in the passing game, it's with Jahan Dotson. But who else in that Penn State receiving core can we watch for on Saturday?
Well, Parker Washington's had a really good year. He's had 2 100-yard receiving games this season. He has great hands, and he changes direction really well. Keandre Lambert-Smith would be the other receiver on the outside that can help balance off the offense. The tight ends, when they're active, it's a big plus. They had 6 catches in the Auburn game for 130 yards. They had 8 catches against Ohio State combined as tight ends. So when the tight ends are active, both in receiving and as blockers, they really are, I think, the key to what makes the Penn State offense go.
Well, one of the surprising things when you look at the statistics about this Penn State game are the struggles running the football. And I think I was looking at a statistic that said, check me on this, they have not had one back go over 100 yards this season in a game?
No, they have not. The last back over 100 yards in a game actually was against Michigan last year. Kevon Lee was the last one to do it. Now, they do split it. I mean, they use 3 backs during the course of the game. Kevon Lee actually had a really good game against Maryland. Limited touches. He still had 50 yards rushing in the game. But this is, this is something where when they played Iowa, they struggled running the ball. They've had a couple of other games where that's happened. Now, I think they've been better running the football, in my opinion, the last 2 games against Ohio State and Maryland, respectively, that has given them enough balance in the offense to make the thing work.
Well, at this point, we're in week 10 of the season. You sort of look at an offense and say it is what it is, especially with all the injuries that both of these teams have. But Saturday, we're going to see 3 guys. Noah Kane, who to me was so impressive, seems to be not the same kind of back this year. Has he been injured?
Well, Noah Kane got hurt in the opener last year against Indiana, and it was a really tough injury. And it took him, he didn't even play against Michigan last year at all. 2 years ago, he was tremendous. But that was a tough injury, and it took him a long time to get back. And I think he's just starting to get his sea legs now. with him, getting back into the groove. I think it's starting to make a difference for him. But his is something where, as time goes, he gets better. But, at the same time, he had to do a lot of rehab work in the offseason just to get himself ready for this season.
Well, over on the defensive side of the ball, the D's been pretty darn good this year, but injuries to deal with over there, too, especially P.J. Mustipher going down. Now, I know last week Jesse Luketa was dinged up and didn't play, but I think he was dressed. That is really still, with that secondary, too, is a very good unit, isn't it?
Defense has been outstanding this year. They haven't been good. They've been outstanding. And especially in the red zone, they've been outstanding. They have given up, so far this year, in the red zone, 10 touchdowns, 12 field goals, and they have taken away the ball 5 times, 5 turnovers. And that's been, the hallmark of when teams have been able to move the ball, they get into the red zone, and Penn State has had answers for teams in the red zone. I mean, that's why the teams are only at a 65% scoring rate against Penn State in the end zone, in the red zone so far. Jair Brown's had a big year. Jaquan Brisker, the other safeties, I think he's a first-team All-Big Ten, first-team All-American candidate. I mean, Penn State's safety combination has been outstanding. I think the linebackers have played really well. Ellis Brooks is smart, athletic. Brandon Smith's coming off his best game. He's a 5-star guy. Curtis Jacobs out to the field has played really well. Jacobs is one of those guys that every week gets a little bit better, and that's really impressive to see.
Steve, Michigan, Penn State, always a key game in the East, one of the biggest games in the conference each year. Again, no exception this year. Michigan alive in the race, and a big finish for Penn State could still make this a very, very good season for them, couldn't it?
Oh, there's no question about that. And obviously Michigan's an excellent team. I've been so impressed watching them. I mean, the power that they have up front on both sides of the ball. Aiden Hutchinson coming back has been a huge plus. I think he's been such a difference maker. And I think Ajabo on the other side has been terrific as well. I really have always liked Ross a lot, the linebacker, number 12. And Daxton Hill, I've always been a big, believer that he's one of the better players in the Big Ten. McNamara's played really well. I mean, he makes very few mistakes. Obviously, we don't know what the deal is with Corum, but Haskins is just one of those, big time point A to point B running backs that, gets behind that offensive line and goes. And Moody is a heck of a place kicker. I mean, every time I turn around, either kickoffs or place kicks, he's been great. I found it interesting that Michigan has 25 touchdowns this year in the red zone, 17 field goals. Mm-hmm. But he's also 17 for 17 in field goals inside the red zone. I think he was missed only 2 all year. He's really good. And I'm watching the Michigan State game, and Mel Tucker called those 3 timeouts, which meant Moody had to kick the ball 4 times, and he made the kick all 4 times.
Yeah. I know he's been money. The big problem.
It's really good
with the red zone is, a lot of the fans are getting impatient because Michigan is kicking a lot of field goals in the red zone instead of turning them into 7 points. And that to me is one of the keys in this game. When you look at, you just mentioned statistically how good Penn State is in the red zone. That's going to be huge this week. It's
going to be huge this week without question because, Michigan's got a lot of talent, but Penn State's defense has a lot of talent. I think it's just a really intriguing matchup between the two. I think it's fun that the game's quote high noon, so I might as well throw even a little more drama in there for the heck of it. Make it a high noon game. But yeah, I think it's a big game for both teams. Penn State's trying to build upon its win last week. Michigan, of course, after that loss to Michigan State, bounced right back last week with a solid performance against Indiana. And, of course, we all know what's on the horizon, especially Thanksgiving weekend.
When you look at this game, Michigan-Penn State this weekend, it's really tough to tell. I've watched as much tape as I could of Penn State, but, you factor in Michigan's injuries, who's going to be there, who's not, we don't know. Penn State's had more than their fair share of injuries, too. So when you look at the game and say, how's this going to go? It seems it's going to be the usual. The defenses especially are going to be the keys in this game, and then turnovers. That seems what's going to determine the game.
Yeah, I think it would be big plays. Which team can get a few chunk plays here and there. Because with these two defenses, it's hard to get a lot of chunk plays,
Yeah.
but a few chunk plays here and there, giveaway, takeaway is going to be really a big factor in this game, either stopping a team from scoring or creating necessary field position. I mean, so you get into big games like this, there's those matchups within the game that are important, but in the end, you look at giveaway, takeaway, points off of turnovers, and you look at who's able to get a chunk play here and there.
Final question before we let you get away, Steve. The Big Ten East and West still up for grabs with 3 weeks left, so it's going to be an exciting finish. And I know you'll see Michigan this week and the Spartans very soon, the week after. But you did get to see Ohio State down at Columbus, and I thought Penn State really played them tough. Do you think this is an Ohio State team that can be beat this year, or are they just still leaps and bounds ahead of everyone else in the East?
Well, I don't think they're leaps and bounds, to be honest with you. I think they're really good. All right, so let's start there. Stroud is a very good quarterback. I really didn't know much about him until he became the starter. Henderson is a major league running back, no getting around it. Wilson's having a terrific year, and I thought him not playing against Nebraska was a big factor in that game. We know what Olave does, and I think Jackson Smith and Jigba has come on, and now he gives them 3. I was talking to a couple of our corners. Now they haven't played, obviously Michigan and everybody else yet. And, one of them told me those are the best 3 receivers we've seen all season, period, on one team. And that doesn't include Ruckert, who's the tight end, and he had a big play in the Penn State game. Defensively, up front, we know that Ohio State has had great guys up front over the years. I mean, one terrific player after another. This Ohio State front, Mike, in my opinion, is very good, not great. I think their linebackers are very good, not great. I think their secondary is the same story, very good, not great. And I think that's what you see. The teams can move the football against them. I watched Penn State, even on the play where Cage ran it back for a touchdown. Penn State's moving the ball in that series. The ball is in Ohio State territory at the 37 when they snapped it. Penn State's going in. And, that was the biggest play of the game. Penn State lost the game because, the two turnovers turned into 10 points in the game. They lost by 9. So that was the big reason why. So do I think they're leaps and bounds? No, I don't. I think that the impression that they're leaps and bounds occurred against the segment of the schedule that you should dominate. And so when they played Penn State, they didn't dominate. When they played Nebraska, they didn't dominate. And when they played Oregon, they didn't win. So I think Ohio State this year is a team that has talent, is very, very good, but to me, not yet great.
And all of this sets up for a fantastic 3 weeks in the Big Ten. And, of course, this Saturday, as you said, high noon in Happy Valley, Michigan at Penn State should be a great game. Here with us on our Visitors Edition this week has been Penn State Radio play-by-play voice Steve Jones. Steve, always a pleasure having you on the show with us, and we look forward to visiting again next year.
Mike, always a pleasure. Great to be with you.
On Quick Hits today, as of Thursday morning, we have no injury updates. Jim said on his radio show Monday he expects some of our injured players will be ready to go Saturday, while others will be game-time decisions. Here are a few game day notes of interest for you. We lead the series with 14 wins against 10 losses. The first meeting with Penn State was in Happy Valley on October 16, 1993, a 21-13 win for Michigan. Last year, the Nittany Lions beat us in the Big House on November 28th, 27-17. James Franklin is in his 8th season as head man at Penn State, and his record is 66-30. He is 90-45 overall in 11 years as a head coach. Last year, they were 4-5 overall. Their last bowl appearance was in the 2019 Cotton Bowl. They beat Memphis 53-39. The weatherman says it will be partly cloudy in State College on Saturday, with temps in the low 40s. Not much chance of rain. So once again, opportunity is staring us in the face. A win on the road in November against a ranked team would be something Jim Harbaugh has not been able to deliver in his 7 years as head coach. It would also set us up for a heart-pounding 2-week finish to the season. All of our goals are still attainable. Can we get it done? We will find out at 12 noon on Saturday. Next week, we stay on the road and travel to Maryland. My scheduled guest on Monday is beat writer Michael Cohen from the Detroit Free Press. On Thursday's Visitors Edition, we hope to have Maryland's legendary play-by-play voice, Johnny Holiday, with us. So make sure you tune in. That will do it for another week. I'm your host, Mike Fitzpatrick. Have a great Wolverine weekend, everyone. Think victory, beat Penn State. Until we meet again, take care, and as always, go blue. Thanks for joining us today on The Michigan Man, here on Wolverine Sports Radio, a member of the V Sporto Network, and in partnership with SB Nation's Maize and Brew. Our listener lines are open 24/7 for your calls at 313-263-4842. That's 313-263-4842. Or email us at themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. That's themichiganmanpodcast@yahoo.com. The Michigan Man Podcast is produced at the studios of Robin Lynn Productions, Allen Park, Michigan, and is not affiliated with the University of Michigan. Go Blue!